So I think specifically on the Olympics, that's really a matter for the 2012 team, and ultimately that's a decision for the Olympic Broadcasting Authority as to what cameras they want to allow in where. As the head of 3D at the BBC, I think that it's important that we explore what big events can look like in 3D. Apart from the Olympics next year, there'll be a range of big public events, not least the Queen's Diamond Jubilee and the celebrations around that. And I'd hope that across some of them, to which the BBC has broadcast access, we'll be able to see what 3D can do to enhance those for people in the UK.
Okay, and obviously because you're in a situation where you have to be careful about what you invest money in with regard to, you know, how many people have 3D TVs, are you looking at in the short-term scale for these type of events, sort of outdoor screens and digital cinema as your way of outputting possibly the iPlayer as well?
Well, we don't at the moment have outdoor 3D screens. Clearly the main route by which most people at the moment are accessing 3D is through digital cinema, and that's something that we're exploring. In working in 3D, there are a couple of things at the moment that we're looking to find out. One is around what can 3D do creatively to enhance the kind of programs that we make. Around big events, that's about bringing people closer to them, allowing them to feel like they're really there and giving them a front seat. That's something that we try and do in our 2D coverage. We need to figure out whether 3D can help us do that even better. We also, of course, want to find out what real people think about the 3D that we're producing, and with, I believe, only about 140,000 sets currently installed in people's homes, we of course have to think about how can we reach a wider, more mainstream audience with 3D content so that we understand their reactions to that and can use it to inform how we go forward.
Okay, I understand that you have spoken before about games consoles and the iPlayer again as a fantastic way of distributing content for 3D wise, because obviously there's a huge sort of distribution network there. What kind of content would you expect to work well on that? I mean, obviously we've got a Strictly Come Dancing clip on at the moment.
So if we talk about consoles, quite often those are used. The handheld consoles like the Nintendo 3DS and other handheld consoles are used on the whole for short form content. That could be short form 3D content where those devices are able to do it. For iPlayer and for broadband connected larger screens, there's the possibility of longer form content accessible when people choose to go into a 3D experience, and I think that could become a very important means of delivering 3D. It's not yet clear to me that a 3D channel, with all that that implies about a continuous stream of 3D content which people watch for several hours on end, is going to be the way that people actually want to watch 3D content. My own sense is that it's much more likely to be about people at particular times seeking out a 3D experience, whether that's because that happens to be what they want to do that evening or that day, or whether it's because there is a big event or a big television program which they feel they want to access in 3D.
Okay. I'm interested also to get your thoughts on conversion, because I recently saw at the 3D storytelling event at Ravensbourne some clips of BBC wildlife programming, and I have to say it did look really good. What about that in terms of a cost-effective solution in the short term? Any thoughts on converting your back catalogue?
Well, clearly 2D to 3D conversion can be much cheaper than shooting 3D from scratch. I think from the 2D to 3D conversion that I've seen, some of it is good and some of it is less good. I think really great 3D comes from shooting in 3D and configuring what you're watching specifically to what 3D can do. There are no plans at the moment to convert the back catalogue. It's something clearly that we'd keep under review, but I think it's also important not to assume that 2D to 3D conversion is straightforward. Some of it can be automated. Really good 2D to 3D conversion needs human beings as well and can be very complicated to do, with the end result most of the time being less spectacular than originated 3D footage.
Native, okay. With the BBC there is a commercial division, isn't there? So, and I know you have a very good relationship with Discovery, who are obviously pushing 3D quite well. They've got the 3Net network in America. can you see with your commercial division sort of partner? Are you partnering with them? Are you discussing? I've just recently watched your Human Planet program, which I think was spectacular. Anything like any kind of talks about co-producing 3D content with Discovery?
Well, we talk to people all the time, and I think we've been quite clear that in terms of 3D, it's very important for us to work with partners, and probably with a range of partners. At the moment, while we want to make sure that everything that we do in 3D is available free to air, the reality is that most of the ways in which people can get 3D are commercial, and therefore if we want to share our 3D as widely as possible, that will have to be in the commercial space with commercial partners too. That doesn't mean we won't make things available through free to air, but we're being realistic about where 3D is at the moment. I think the other thing that's probably worth saying is that 3D is quite expensive to make. It's not mainstream yet. It may never become mainstream. We're a broadcaster, and our primary business is broadcasting to many, many people across the platforms and in the ways that the majority of those people can receive. Therefore, it would be entirely wrong to be spending any significant proportion of the license fee on making 3D content at the moment. Nonetheless, it's important to us to experiment, and we'll be looking to work with partners in order to do that.
Well, talking of the cost issue, I recently spoke to Steve Schler from 3Reality, who predicted just in 18 months' time that we might be producing programming, even episodic content, in 3D as well as the cost is reduced. Do you think do you think it's right in 2 years' time we might be watching, flagship mainstream BBC programming? No, I'm not saying watching, but produced in 3D as well, if the cost is reduced to the same level for things like 3D Blu-rays, perhaps at the end of season Blu-rays?
I hate to be pessimistic, but I think it's highly unlikely. I think what we know from sort of previous technology waves is, of course, the levels of skill will go up, reducing production cost, and the cost of the technology will come down. Nonetheless, we have to bear in mind that to make really great 3D effectively requires a separate shooting and post-operation. Of course, you can take some of it for 2D. Of course, there are ways in which you can cut across, but you won't produce the best 3D that you could. It's an art form in its own right. Therefore, those costs don't go away. I think the other thing is that it's unproven. Very, very little television drama has been made in 3D. To suggest that we'd go from sort of nothing to it being routine in 18 months, as I say, I think is ambitious, particularly given that the forecasts for 3D penetration into the home are not that ambitious over the short term. I'm absolutely certain people will acquire 3D technology in the home. They will acquire it because they will upgrade their sets for a variety of reasons, and they may well get 3D as part of that. The real question for all of us is how they use that 3D technology. And I think the challenge to us over the next 18 months to 2 years as producers, and that goes beyond the BBC, is to work on figuring out how to make really great, spectacular, made-for-television 3D content. That's quite a big challenge.
To watch the full version of Danielle Nagley's interview, visit 3dfocus.co.uk. Plus, we visit the BBC R&D lab where lead technologist Oliver Grell talks about a fascinating project called i3D Live, as well as studies into stereoscopic capture using super high vision. To stay up to date with all the latest 3D Focus videos, click on subscribe right now. Thanks for watching.